Hello everyone, this is going to be a quick guide on Nioh 3 Endgame, and then I'm also going to show my build. However, as you can see here, if you play DFO, I've been doing the equivalent of hell modes for like hours, and it won't drop this last piece, but I'm still relatively demolishing everything despite that. So, I'm sorry that I don't have any complete sets right now. The game has been completely refusing to give them to me, and I don't really have any control over that, but this should still help. So first off, before I get into the build, I'm going to go over the end game loop here, which essentially, when you finish the game, you will get a new difficulty, which is pretty standard for Nioh games at this point. Chances are, if you played a Nioh game before, you already know how this works. Like, the world resets, but in this game, it kind of like partially resets. As you can see here, I was relatively thorough on my first playthrough. I actually got most of the stuff just blind. Keep in mind, I've had this game for like almost 2 weeks now, so I did not have any kind of outside advice. There was no one to talk to. I conversed with literally like one person, and that was after I finished the game, and he had a key as well. But other than that, I did everything blind, so this game is actually quite accessible to get things. It's definitely not open world, it's more like open zone. But in any case, when you go to the next difficulty, the main difference between this and the other games is that you can reset the missions, but also the world like partially resets as well. By that I mean the objectives and points of interest, like enemy bases and lesser crucibles will respawn. And what happens is you will get a item that allows you to reset them. So you go here, when you clear a normal one, you'll get this, and then when you clear a normal one, you'll also get one of these as well. So if you recall a memory from this first one here, then you'll get one of these enhanced one. What this does is it essentially changes the spawns. So like for this one, you'll get an Enra at the end, whereas if you do it normally, an Enra will not spawn at the end. So I don't know how much it impacts drops. I mean, I've done this specific one like multiple times because unfortunately, or whether maybe fortunately, depending on how you look at things, there are a lot of annoying enemies recycled in this game, so there may be certain ones that you don't want to do. So what I recommend is going and clearing out a lot of the enemy bases. If you clear these out, you will get one of those items. So let's go and do that right now. Let's see if I can find one here. In terms of your questions, there's only one difficulty, so unfortunately, this game is going to fall into the same trappings as a lot of other Team Ninja games, where you know the DLC is like half the game. There is quite a bit to do, but I definitely feel like it should have like at least one more difficulty. I think the main problem is that it's going to be like a month. It's going to be like 6 months between difficulties, so I think that there's not enough to really keep people engaged, and then also the problem is the fact that, sorry, I can't talk while I'm doing this. The problem is that, like, everything is going to get power crept as soon as we get to the new difficulty, so you're really going to have to gauge how much of this that you want to do. I mean, if you want to just have like a really OP build and max everything out, then I suppose that you could do that, but I'd say the problem is, you know, all of it's going to get power crept. Usually in Team Ninja games, I don't know if this one's going to be different, but usually what happens is everything gets power crept like within the first like couple hours of playing. So you have to really think if it's worth maxing everything out. However, there are things like the Crucible Arts and all the other like world activities that you can do that will give you more permanent power, more vertical progression, so to speak. But personally, I finished about everything at about 55 hours, and the past couple hours has been grinding, so take that as you will. In any case, graces are in the game. I'll probably compile a list of graces once I find more. And then also, there are the ability to upgrade your weapons and stuff. So you go back to the base here. I found the open zone to be quite good. It didn't overstay its welcome. I was really worried that this was going to be like an Ubisoft-sized world, but it's actually quite small. You can get around pretty quick. I know this might be an unpopular opinion, but Dynasty Warriors 9 was a lot like this. That game had a big open world. The difference with that was that you could get around very quickly. In this game, it's a lot more densely packed and there's a lot more content. I think what you could call this most similar to would be Sonic Frontiers and most of the RGG games, where, you know, it's like a small area, but there's lots of things to do. Like, as you can see here, on these other maps, there's something to do, like, every few steps, and it doesn't really overstay its welcome or get too big. It is still going to be hard to find certain things, but for the Kodama and the Jizo spirits and stuff, like, there's more than enough of them to unlock everything, so don't feel pressured to get everything unless you're really caring about achievements. I'm not really an achievement guy, so I didn't bother with it. But yeah, this game was very satisfying to just get through in general. In any case, so they have something new here called Soul Extraction. Soul Extraction will give you these ores, but to get the Viridian ores here, actually it's called Azure, sorry. The Azure ores, it has to be a plus weapon. Then you can go up to plus 14 on this current difficulty. So what that means is, if there's a weapon you don't like, or it just doesn't have good rolls on it, or, you know, you've already learned the Crucible art on it and you've got a better one, what you can do is you can disassemble these through Soul Extraction, and it will give you the ability to upgrade things. So we'll go ahead and try that out right now. I may not have too many because I haven't really been on the game much today. I've been scrambling to get this done, and I was really trying to get a build guide out, and unfortunately the game just kind of wasn't wanting to drop anything, so that's kind of out of my control. However, I can still show some of the things here. What I've done instead is I have compiled a number of runs through that Lesser Crucible that I kept recycling or resetting. I basically just included that so you guys can see a little bit of how the build works, and then from there you can decide if you want to deviate from it or not. So, actually I do not have enough plus items, but essentially you can go in here, say I want to upgrade Ninja Style. I've actually been using both styles, not just Ninja Style, but the RNG's been pretty rough, to be honest with you. So you can take this, for instance. You can soul match, and you can also select plus value. So let's go back here. So the first few don't take that much, but it scales up exponentially. Also, the amount of money it takes is pretty nuts. Like, this one's 248 million. So, I think that's kind of the problem with this endgame, is that you can do this, but just due to how these games work, you know, the next rarity is probably going to be in the next difficulty, which means that all this is going to get replaced. If you want to grind for it to have something to do, it's fine, but I'd say, honestly, you can clear everything in probably under 100 hours, depending on skill level, using guides. Obviously, with the embargo lifting right now, there's going to be a lot more access to tools and resources and guides than the people who had keys like myself had. You can finish basically everything in 100 hours, and I do think that it's a bit of a misstep that they only have one New Game Plus, and it just due to how power scaling and progression works, vertical progression works in these games. I don't know if it's really worth doing this. I mean, I guess you could potentially stick with this until you got like your full ethereals and everything, because they're essentially only doing 2 DLC packs, right? So what that means is the next one probably will have ethereals, and we won't have another one with divines. But I just kind of feel like the 6-month wait between DLC is probably going to kill the interest in this game. The mods will help quite a bit. I know people have been looking into finding affixes and stuff that aren't currently in the game. That was something that you could do in Nioh 2 as well. A lot of them from Nioh 1 that got scrapped, you could still use them and stuff, so I'm hoping that that will happen. But honestly, you can get about maybe, I'd say 60 to 80 hours out of this, depending on if you want to do achievements or not. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and show my build here. What's the best way to do this? So basically I'm running Grace of Vice Ravana. What this does is it gives a lot of key damage on your moves, and then martial art damage, and then if you can get the 7 pieces, which unfortunately the game has been very cruel to me. You can get attack bonus off strength. If you want to see my stat spread, I can go ahead and show that right now. And then for the gameplay portion, I will put that after this part. I'll cut to some highlights I recorded earlier. So for my soul cores, I'm using Scampus. Scampus is just as good as before. However, you get a lot less of them than before, where you could like spam them and completely decimate human bosses. Human bosses are kind of not fun in this game because they deflect and they have like way more hyper armor than before. And also, zero key combos got nerfed, so it can be useful to use these, especially because with my build being a martial artist, you're going to be using a lot of tonfas and talons and stuff like that, and those have very high key damage. So these will help you to just kind of keep the hurt on even more. I've got everybody's favorite Epon here for the strong attack key damage. Now, this actually does still do damage and good key damage, however, because it's not a yokai ability anymore. It's definitely nerfed. It's nowhere near as good as it was before, but it is useful. I use Lightning Familiar to proc Lightning. Steel, Sloth, Power, Preservation, Talisman are pretty normal stuff. Keyburst Talisman, I've actually been experimenting with this during the embargo. It actually is kind of nice to use because you can kind of take some of their key away while you're crowded, you know, while you're surrounded, because essentially, if you're going to be primarily playing as a ninja, you're going to have paper-thin defense. In terms of my level, I went for 40 magic just to have the max yokai soul cores available. And then I went main stat for strength. Stamina for equipment weight is going to be really important because I personally play with A agility in both styles. It's definitely a lot harder to get lower encumbrance rate in this compared to the first two games. I assume that will change with DLC and expansions and patches and stuff, but this has been helping because you can still essentially equip like one 2-weight piece, like right here. I've got one 2-weight piece here. Now if I put another one on, I'll be at B agility, but I like staying at A personally. In terms of what I use here, let me go ahead and go to the training room. Training room in this is actually like really bad because it doesn't scale up to you. So if you want to practice in here, you probably would have to use a cheat to like give them more health or something. But this should actually help quite a bit. I think the video will probably be a better explanation of this, but essentially, what I run for ninja style is... Oops. What I run for ninja style is Pheasant Leap. Pheasant Leap is like an on-demand jump cancel, and you can also use it in the ground. When you use it in the air, it puts you back down to the ground like Virgil's trick down. So that can be very useful as well. One combo I usually use is I'll cancel into a Pheasant Leap and then an air dash, and that can even let you clear some grabs. Now, granted, this is a Team Ninja game, so the grabs have the hitbox of Texas, so it won't always work, but there definitely were some difficulty spike bosses I was relatively able to trivialize by using that combo. Thundering Calamity is really good because it's essentially a melee shotgun. It's a Ninpo shotgun. The closest you are, it does more damage, I think. And you'll get a lot of these. What it will do is it will also proc lightning. So if you want to build around lightning, this is a really good way to do it because it will slow them down for a while. And from what I can see, it doesn't proc diminishing returns with Sloth Talisman either. So you can really burst enemies down really quick. Cicada Shell is something from Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge. That was the first game that had that. So it basically works the same here. However, Ninja gets a back attack bonus. So if you can hit them while they're recovering, you can essentially take off a bunch of their ki and put them in a combo. The videos I'm about to cut to after this will basically explain that. But I'll go ahead and show it here. You're going to have to forgive me here. This tutorial is not the best, because despite working on this for years, they didn't realize that these guys have way too little health. Don't ask me why. It can't even really demonstrate anything, but we just do this a couple times, you guys should get a good idea. You can't even take one Heavenly Chain. So what I did there was I canceled this into the Pheasant Leap, and it's essentially a way to get to the air right away. So you see that did 4,000 damage. Granted, he's like level 1, so that's going to one-shot him regardless, but on New Game Plus, I am still able to take off huge chunks by doing that. Let's see if we can get a Cicada Shell here. Now, your success rate and usefulness with Cicada Shell is greatly going to vary on the moveset. As you're going to see in the videos here, I think I got some videos where some runs where I use Cicada Shell on Anenra's big, like, kick attack, and he has a lot of recovery from that, so I'm essentially able to use the back attack bonus and deplete his ki really quickly. But there definitely are some enemies that will track, or they'll turn around really quick, so for me, I've mostly been using it on the end of their strings. If you know their attack patterns and their strings enough, you can use it on the last one and get a guaranteed punish. Otherwise, they might want to do something like this. Like that was square, triangle into Pheasant Leap. And then also, you can do it a trick down like this. Let me see here. And he's not wanting to do it now. Give me a sec. Well, I don't know why it's working, but essentially, you're going to be using the Tonfas with Heavenly Chain. Heavenly Chain and stack as much ki damage as you can, and there's a number of ways you can go with this. You can stack ki damage when the enemy is under the certain effect. Like, I have the Searing Bolt Tonfa on right now, which procs lightning and fire, so that's actually going to give a lot of leeway in terms of how you want to stack. You know, if they're scorched or shocked, then you can stack around that. Otherwise, you can just go for martial art ki damage, whichever one is good for you. And then also on your secondary weapon, it's nice to have wind, because wind, I think, increases ki damage. So that will just help too. Other than that, roll with whatever you want, but definitely don't waste resources on really affixing or really optimizing your armor until you have the exact set that you want, because the drop rates are still relatively low. Getting the right piece and the right weight and everything can be pretty difficult. You do have a lot more freedom over what's on your items now, thanks to reforging. They kind of took that system from Wolong, where they got rid of a lot of the RNG. However, you want to kind of stick with whatever you find is best until you find a full set, because essentially you're going to be replacing all this, right? If you want to invest resources into these to wait for the DLC in 6 months, then, you know, you could probably max these out if you're really bored. And then, essentially, probably get through the initial power and difficulty spike on the next difficulty when it comes, and then, you know, probably just stick with this until you get the next rarity. I'm going to assume that the next rarity, or the next difficulty, is going to have ethereals, in which place all this is going to get replaced. It's up to you. In any case, there also are Yasukanis in the game. They seem incredibly rare. Let me go ahead and show one more thing here before I cut the gameplay. Let me go to Blessing. Now, seen here, Kodama and Jizo Blessings. You probably have already interacted with these systems throughout the demo. So what happens when you get a certain amount of them? I guess when you, like, mostly max it out, you get Sudama Blessings. Sudama Blessings allow you to essentially target farm. Like, for instance, I was trying to get a Talons from a martial arts build, and then this one also has wind on it innately. So you can put this here. For instance, I have a Yasukani here as well. And you can also change it between Samurai and Ninja, because apparently they don't stack. As far as I can tell, anyway. I guess you have to find them first. So if you find them, you can change it in here. Like there's I think there was a Yasukani in here. Yeah, this is the Samurai Yasukani. And then this is the the ninja Yasukani. And then you can also change things in here. So what I've been doing is I've been using like whatever weight I want and whatever doesn't have a set effect on it by default. Like this one's got one on it innately, right? So you don't really want to use this to target farm if you're going for graces. You want to have something that does not have a grace by default or any kind of set effect. So for instance, you could use these, and then when it drops there will be a chance that you'll get a drop of this with the grace. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and let's see here, get a dual swords for my samurai. So we're going to go with this one. And you use the Choco Cups corresponding to how many things you change. So since I'm still trying to get a lot of these graces, I'm just going to go ahead and choose one. And then from that point, there will be an increased drop rate. As you can see here, you get the Sakumo fragments. You get those from disassembling things or like donating them and stuff. So I definitely recommend setting up auto disassemble. Auto disassemble is probably the most useful at the end game because you're going to max out pretty quick anyway. Like I'm already close to maxed out and I've only been playing for like 60 hours. I would recommend disassembling because you'll get a lot of the fragments to allow you to reforge and change what's on your gear. So there are some nice ways to target farm, and I think that that's an improvement, but overall, I think it's a misstep to make us wait like half a year for the first DLC, and then like not really have more than one New Game Plus. So people are gonna burn out on this very quick. I also think that a lot of new players will wonder why the game is so easy and stuff, because obviously it's going to get harder later on, and then also there won't really be any reason to get all this stuff. But despite that, I think the end game is pretty solid. It's got a good foundation. There are some improvements here, like being able to target farm and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, how much you play is going to be up to your discretion. So just keep in mind, I'm going to assume that they're just going to skip having an extra difficulty with divines, and we're probably just going to go straight up to ethereals. So if that's the case, everything we get is going to be replaced. However, you can essentially make the initial grind on the first, the first expansion a lot easier this way. So do what you want. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and cut to some gameplay that I recorded with no commentary, so you guys can see a little bit more of the build. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.